Hello and welcome to the 11th video in this series, making a space shooter using HTML and JavaScript. So you see in the video here we've got, or on the screen here, sorry, you'll see we've got in the finished app, so press space to start, and then when I click the space bar I get the 3, 2, 1 and go. I'll refresh and then we get a game over when the game is over. I want to put that logic in this video into our app, which is just continuously running and ticking along here with the game over and the counting down, because we're able to have a game over now because we've when the enemies finish all their waypoints, then the game is over. So into Visual Studio Code then, the first thing we're going to need to do is add some definitions into defs.js. The first definitions I want to add in is an object called GamePhase, and this has inside it then 4 different states that we're in. Ready to play is when the spacebar can be pressed to start the game. Countdown to start is when we're in the middle of counting down. Playing obviously is when we're playing, and game over is when the game is over, because when the game is over we need a certain state for that, because we're going to actually pause before we allow the user to do anything before having the press space to start again. The other thing we'll need is to specify a gap for the countdown, and also some values to count down. So 2, 1 and go, we'll just hard code in the 3 that we originally see. So we have a 700 millisecond gap between showing the 3, the 2, the 1 and the go, and then starting the game. Inside the game manager itself we're going to add in a new property that's called the phase, so the current phase the game is in, and we'll set that on first load to being in game over. The actual value of that will be sorted and set straight away in main.js when the reset game is called right at the start when everything's loaded up. Okay, so now we've done that, we need to think about how we're going to arrange ourselves with showing these various things on the screen, and we're going to do it in a very similar way to what we did with the score container. I'm going to add a div in called a message container, and in this div then I'm just going to put a message called game over, and I'll give this a class message and call it game over with the text. And I'd like my message container then to be in the middle of the screen, and I'd like my message then, I'll put a couple of messages in actually. Let's just put, for placeholding for now, press space so we can see both of them. Now when I have that set up like this, we're going to have a look at the browser and refresh. You can see they appear in the top left hand corner of the screen, which is not what we want. So we need to add a little bit of styling. So in styles.css we'll add some styling in for our message. So our message class, we give it a font size and some padding. I'll just go back to here and refresh. Now you can see we've got some nice padding. We've got game over, press space. The only problem is it's in the wrong place. We want it more or less in the middle of the screen. To do that, I have a message container styling for the ID message container, so the hash absolute position 200 pixels from the top, align its text in the center, occupy 100% of the width, which have the effect of then having all of our divs centralized on the play area, and a Z index of 40, so it definitely will be written over the top of everything else. So I'll just quickly go back to the browser and refresh, and now you can see these have moved now more or less into the middle of the screen, the game over and the press space. So what we need to do now then is we need some functions. We need quite a little bit of logic now. We need to be able to write into our message container. I need to be able to clear any divs that are out inside there and write a new message, or maybe append a div to the divs that are already inside our message container. To do that then, we're going to write 3 functions. The first one is going to be called clear messages, and I'll put these below the tick. And here we can use jQuery empty simply to select, or jQuery to select our message container, and then just call the empty function to get rid of any of the divs that are inside there. What I want to do then is I want to be able to append a message. So to do that I'm going to select my message container again using jQuery, and then use the append function to append a particular div to the message container. So here we have append message, we take in some text, we select the message container using jQuery, call the dot append, and here I've created, there are a number of ways of doing this, I've done it just in a line of text here, created a div with a message class. What we need now then is a function to be able to append a message. This takes a text argument, and then we'll select our message container with jQuery, use the append function and append a div. The only thing with this div is here that I want to make sure I give it the message class. And we're good to go there to append a message. If I just double check how this works, I'll call the clear messages in the reset game here, which should have the effect of removing our text from the browser, which you can see here after a refresh. And then let's just call append message hello. So it should create as a new div and add that then onto the browser. And now we see hello appearing here. So we have our clear messages and append message working. The other thing I want to do is write a message. And we do that using a combination of clear messages and append message with our text. So we write something new, we overwrite everything that's already inside that div. So that's our message writing functions written, so we're able to write in the middle of the screen, game over, or the countdown or whatever. The thing that's remaining now is to actually put this countdown logic inside. So we'll make a new function called run countdown. And we're going to set the phase of the game manager to be countdown to start, because that's what we're doing. We're in the middle of the countdown. And the first thing we'll do is we'll write the message 3. So we'll have a 3 in the middle of the board when we start our countdown. And now we have in desk.js our list of countdown values. We're going to loop through those countdown values. And for each of these countdown values, we'll set a timeout. So this line here, what we do is for each of the loops, so I is 0, 1 and 2, what we'll do here is we'll call write message after a gap of I plus 1 times the gap. So in the first loop it'll be 700 milliseconds, then 1400, then 2100. So in other words, call write message every 700 milliseconds. And we'll pass an argument parameter to write message, which is the value at I. So in other words, one of the values 2, 1 or 0 to write message to then be written to the screen. So we start off with 3, and then after 700 milliseconds we'll write 2, after another 700, 1, and another 700, go to the screen. I can test that very quickly just in the reset game. And you can see the countdown running there on the screen. What we need now is a nice way of ending the countdown, because we need to clean up obviously the go on the screen and things like this. So we'll clear all messages for a start. And in here then, when the countdown has ended, we'll set our timeout and our tick going. So we'll set our phase to we're now playing, last updated to now, and set our timeout tick game settings, target frames per second. And what we can do then is we can, at the end of the run countdown, set another timeout, much like the one inside the loop, where we say after the length plus 1 of the countdown value, so after 4 multiplied by the gap, so 2800 milliseconds, we'll call our end countdown. And that'll then set our tick going and the game actually running. The other thing I need to do then is inside reset game, I need to take out this call to set timeout. And now if I put run countdown inside here, what we should see is the go disappear, and then we'll actually see the frames per second, etc. updating. So we've got 3, 2, 1, and now we have our frames per second, so the game is running. Okay, so that's the first little bit of logic in. We've got our countdown. I want to be able to write another function that when the game is actually over, so we have a way of detecting the game being over. That's when our enemies all have finished their waypoints and gone off the screen. I'd like to be able to show something when the game is over. So let's write a function called show game over. We'll set the game phase to game over. And we'll write a message game over. Now we can set a timeout. Where in this timeout we have an anonymous function here. We just write the function as one inside here, which just appends a message saying press space to reset, and that comes after our press space delay, which if I remember correctly is about 3 seconds or something like this. And I've just realized saying that we haven't added in the press space delay, so we should add that in, and we'll add that in just here. It's good that I noticed that. So we have a press space delay of 3000 milliseconds here. So here we're saying in the settings after 3 seconds, so we get the game over when we show the game over. We're in the game over phase, and then we'll append a message press space to reset after the press space delay here for our game over. To deal with that properly though, we actually need some kind of logic inside the tick here. So before we set our timeout, we'll ask ourselves, is the game over, yes or no? So if we're calling, if the enemies are game over is true, so they've all finished their paths and sequences and gone off the screen, then we'll log game over to the console, and then we'll show our game over here. Write the message show game over, and then with the space to reset popping up after 3 seconds. Otherwise, we can call our set timeout with the tick as normal. So what should happen now is if I run this in the browser, we get our countdown running now, and what we should get is when the enemies have finished doing everything, we should get the game over flashing up and no more tick. So there's the 6 enemies, and now we get game over appearing, and then after 3 seconds we append the press space to reset to the screen. Good, so we've got a little bit more logic coming in there. The last thing is to deal with that nicely and allow us to replay the game, so we need to do something with the key presses that we have inside the game. So I'm going to drop down a little bit into the document ready function here and add a little bit of logic into here for when a key is pressed. So the first thing I'll ask is if the phase is ready to play, and if the key that's been pressed is space, then we can start running our countdown. Otherwise, if we're playing the game already, then we can try to move our player. So to recap then, if we're in the middle of, move that across, if we're ready to play, then we'll detect a space only and run the countdown when the user hits it. Otherwise, if we're in the middle of playing, then we'll move the player around. The only other case remaining is if we have a game over. And in this case, we want to detect another space press, and if we press space once the game is over, then we'll call reset game immediately. The only other last little bit of remaining logic that we need inside here, it's obviously not inside reset game, is to remove the run countdown. I want to set the game phase immediately as ready to play, the last updated as date now, the elapsed time as 0, and then write a message to the screen saying press space to start. And we should be all ready to go now for the actual logic in the game. It should all be relatively well tied together. I'm going to go into index.html and remove the 2 divs inside here and just refresh, and now we've got press space to start. So hopefully when I press space it'll count down, and it is. And now I'm able to move my player around, the enemies should come on the screen, and once they're finished we should get the game over and then the press space to start on the screen, and the logic looks relatively sensible. So I can't move the player now, it won't let me. I'm pressing keys, it won't let me. Now press space to reset, and now press space to start. The countdown runs, and the game runs again. Good, so that's quite a big step actually, the last couple of videos. We've got enemies added on, bullets added on, and we've got some game logic now to manage all of the starting and stopping of our game. And the remaining videos are actually a little bit lighter than the past 2 or 3, and we need to add explosions, collision detection and sounds and things like that, and then the game is more or less done. So thanks very much for watching. Comments and questions welcome as always, and see you in the next one.